GLAM, Los Angeles.
Hi, Kirby. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to Los Angeles.
I'm not even going to do an intro. Like if you've seen the title of the app. Like here we are. So excited! The Lipstick Lesbians are here
in the flesh.
Christina and Alexis, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
I feel like today's a special edition Valentine's episode.
I know we're filming
is.
this on
I know, in the
Valentine's,
future.
and you have this beautiful like rose.
I was very inspired.
You're very sexy, actually.
Yes,
We're seeing
I think so, too.
collarbones.
I've
we're
been
seeing
invited
shoulders.
into my sexy era.
Oh my gosh! Wait,
I'm
almost
so here
forced.
For it. Not me.
Not you, no.
Not
But
me,
you're here
Christina,
for it.
what?
No.
We
Just
need to talk about the hair
that's
and like the
that's the all your
bangs.
invitation of the sexy era.
I mean, I feel like both of you just look so sleek, so put together. Both during your
Yes,
sexy
Thank you
eras.
so much. Yes, thank you.
Christina's like, what about me, babes? No,
No, she knows.
I'm actually. Can I ask you about this? You're like,
Yeah.
I was forced into my sexy area, but I feel like I've entered like my more feminine era in the past like
Oh.
8
I love
months.
this.
I'm like,
Interesting you're leading with that. With the
Really?
feminine. Yeah, because I feel like with our content, not to get into our content, but I
Please.
feel like, a lot of people that reach out, it's really about like the healing of the feminine too.
Yes.
And I think that there's like this era of just like rejoicing and reclaiming the feminine happening.
100%,
And I think
yeah.
we're a part of that.
I
really
Oh,
fascinating.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. I mean, if you're watching this, I'm wearing fur. Like,
Yeah.
I'm really trying to like enter this
Yeah.
feminine because I feel like we have to be so strong. There's so
Yes.
many different people, so many different things going on in our lives, and
Yeah.
we're able to just. I mean, when I'm with my girlfriends, I'm able to just kind of like let go. When I'm talking about beauty,
Mhm.
I don't feel like I have to have this like guard up. I
Yeah.
can just kind of let go and enjoy it.
Yes, but there's power in femininity.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So,
Okay, we just want to quickly get in. So we have these two separate questions because everyone's like product formulators, product
Yeah.
developers,
Yeah.
but you are the product developer.
Yes.
You are
Alexis.
an educator.
Alexis.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yes.
No, I know.
Yes.
For
For
So
those
don't get us
everyone.
confused.
Yes, for those that are not watching, Alexis, product developer,
Yes.
and Christina, educator,
Yes.
and like digital extraordinaire.
Yes.
You understand
Digital
what
education.
what
Yeah.
people want
Yeah.
to see and
Yes.
how people consume content.
Yes.
Not to like take it all the way back, but like, how did you guys figure out that this was gonna work?
Oh gosh. This
That
a
is
great
taking it all the way back.
question.
But it dovetails really beautifully into this a little bit of hiding, as I call it. And I was hiding behind clients of mine as a consultant, hiding behind a little bit perhaps of just lowering my volume as a person, a lot of the reclamation of the femininity and the skin. And I keep talking about I was kind of pushed into this sexy era by Chris McMillan and our stylist, Sally Lindley. She's Sally
Shout out to
Lindley. Shout
Sally
out to Sally
Lindley.
Lindley.
She's
She's
great.
been yelling at me for 2 months. I need to see skin on camera, Alexis. Skin.
Damn.
And
Well, I'm
the-
here for it.
I'm here for it, and-
Oh, absolutely.
she's right. She's right. And it's a reclamation to go back to our beginning. I started on a retail sales floor. So my beginnings were at the age of 19. I worked for NARS Cosmetics retail. And specifically, what stuck out to me as a 19-year-old, and we're going back to 2006, is that not one woman ever came into the sales floor, came up to at the time we would, the bay, and sat down in my chair and ever had anything nice to say about herself when she looked in the mirror. And this is a story that fast forward, at that time, it was almost, it was 2014. My first date with a woman ever, who is the woman that's sitting next to me, who is now my wife.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
I'm literally pitching her on starting a beauty brand and
Literally.
that telling her, mind you, I had just been let go of my first job ever in corporate beauty, but I'm pitching her that I'm going to start a brand one day. And the brand was in many ways just for me the dream to start a beauty brand. But it was also about being an entrepreneur, and it was also about power, and it was also about all the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Well, mind you, also, like when she was pitching me this brand, she was talking about cosmetics and breaking them down and where they're made and the manufacturing side. And I've never heard anyone talk about beauty that way. But I'm also wasn't traditionally a beauty girly. Even now, I'm like, I'm not a beauty girly, but I guess I am. Like, my
You totally
association.
are.
But it was really interesting because I even remember talking to my therapist about it at times. Like, oh, I met this girl. She's really into beauty, but it's not like a makeup artist, which was great for makeup artists, but it was just deeper. It was like this love and passion and the way, the cosmetics formulation and breaking it down. And she was like, she's intellectual. I was like, yes,
Yes.
she's
So
intellectual.
wait, how did you guys meet?
Tinder.
Tinder. Shout out to Tinder. It's the Tinder gods.
Wow.
Who made
Yeah.
who sent the first message?
I did.
You.
It was about
Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks after I moved the notch over to liking men and women.
Oh,
And I had
so okay, you
a
were like,
series of events that led up to this big mega moment, because a part of reclaiming your feminine and a part of actually loving your feminine is also, for me, it was this beauty renaissance of how do I be a lesbian who loves makeup as much as I do? I actually cut my hair really short
Yeah. When I met her, she
at
had
one
really short
point,
hair.
shorter than it is in this moment.
Yeah.
wow.
And up until, 5 days ago, my hair was a lot longer
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I was letting
yes.
it grow.
Also, you didn't wear lipstick on the first
Mm-mm.
date. Which
I was
really
very,
interesting.
very confused about the stereotypes placed on lesbian women. And I thought at that time, and this is my mid-20s, that I had to embody a certain aesthetic
Mm.
to be a lesbian. So this is a path of self-discovery.
Mhm.
And a lot of that self-discovery is what leads to what you see today, which are, we're not necessarily outwardly discussing lesbianism, but we are just being authentically ourselves. And the
I'll
name
always
itself,
remind you that we're lesbians because
Right.
our handle's the Lipstick Lesbians, but it's not about being gay.
No,
right?
it's
Right.
about reclaiming really just who you want to be as a human
Mhm.
and understanding who you are as a human. And a lot of the journey of the decade plus that
Mhm.
Christina and I have been together, we've had the luxury in our relationship to explore each other,
Right.
but we've also had the luxury to give each other space and time to explore ourselves. Through
Yeah.
careers, we've lived like 7 lives at this point
Yeah.
being together. So it wasn't ever a situation where we knew we were going to make it, especially in social media. But we did really believe in ourselves. So that first date, 5 years later, we were in a slightly more comfortable, established position in our careers. And Christina kind of looked at me. This is around 2018.
It was the Women's March.
It was the Women's
March.
March.
Yeah.
2017, 2018 era.
Yeah.
At the time, I was working at a strategic, Shiseido. I had reached like the pinnacle of my goal at the time, which was because I started with NARS, I wanted to work for NARS corporate. Instead, I ended up as close as you could be at Shiseido, the parent company of NARS, the makeup center of excellence. And it worked out even better for me. But ultimately, Christina was like, you're so ready. You stacked the experiences in a way that take the plunge. I have the health insurance. Let's
I
become
was a teacher
domestic
at the
partners. Go become a consultant. Let's do the brand. Let's go. And it was her education lens.
Mhm.
One night, many things for us happened over beautiful Nebbiolos and Barollos
At
at an Italian
actually.
restaurant,
Yeah.
ironically. And you were discussing something that one of your students challenged you with.
Yeah, because I was an English teacher at the time, and we were talking about the story of Adam and Eve. I don't even remember how it came
Yeah.
up, but I will never forget Lukinson and him
No.
challenging me. And we were drinking about it over wine that night, and it was like, wait, what if that's the story of our lipstick company? What if we ask questions like, well, what if Adam took a bite out of the apple first? How would life be different? And that was the catalyst to our 4 lipsticks that we did.
We launched.
Manufactured in Italy with some
Mhm.
great suppliers that Alexis had relationships with.
Yeah.
And that
2019,
was
it
the
was
birth of Fempower Beauty. Talk about empowering the feminine.
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
always the
Yeah.
mission.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And female empowerment. And that was our launch of our brand.
It was. And it was all about asking questions.
Yes.
And we had this beautiful goal of affirming, all the folks that were attracted to our brand, whether you were non-binary, whether you were queer, whether you were a woman, whether you just wanted to reclaim one part of yourself or rewrite a part of yourself.
Right.
We wanted to invite you to do that with our brand. And the irony is that in 2019, we had kicked off in terms of a launch, slow to start a little bit, but we started building up more and more traction. We ended up 6 months into the launch, finding ourselves on Good Morning America.
With Robin Roberts, who outed me on live TV,
Literally.
which is hilarious.
It
I don't
was.
even think she knows this.
No, I don't think Robin Roberts knows.
No,
because
it's so funny.
I had surprised Christina with a proposal 2 days or 1 day before, I think, Good Morning America. And it was World Pride that year in New York. I had, at the time, asked if I could propose to her at the Wing, RIP Wing.
All right.
Wow.
Yes.
And we did it
Yes.
in Flatiron, like in Audrey Gelman's church,
Yep.
as we called it.
Mhm.
And we had this beautiful
It
surprise
was amazing.
engagement party at the Wing on the rooftop
And it
in
was 2
Flatiron.
days
God, I have
before Good Morning
goosebumps.
America. And then on Good Morning America, she's like, oh, and congratulations on the engagement.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
And it was It was peak girl boss era. It was Sophia
Yeah.
Amoruso.
Right.
And we got a large check by her and Sophia Amoruso
Girl
on live
boss.
TV. It was amazing.
It was when she
Wow.
launched.
That was such like an
A
era.
moment.
Yes.
2019.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
Yes,
Mhm.
it was a summer.
That's
right
how far
before-
back we've been in the entrepreneurship game.
Yeah. And it was right before we all know what happened, right? In 2020.
The
So we were
pandemic.
on like this ascent with our beauty brand. And then 2020, and we sold lipsticks that weren't transfer proof. And boom, all of a sudden it was like, whoa. okay,
Everything
we need
came
to-
kind of
and
to
we
a
didn't
screeching
have any
halt.
money left to really do anything because we completely self-funded our brand. And it's not something I would recommend. If you're listening, don't self-fund your beauty brand.
Right.
Wait,
It's
why?
just-
Why? Because I feel like we have so many founders on the pod, and some would argue that you should.
Oh
You-
my
you know,
God.
And why,
I mean,
why not?
I guess
There's-
don't do it in the
there's-
way we did it. To clarify, I think it's because we believed in ourselves so much, we just kept on pouring money into it over and over and over again. And I think we had an understanding it would cost a lot of money, but it got to the point where obviously like a cataclysmic thing such as COVID, like no one could anticipate that. And that being said, I know a lot of beauty brands also flourished,
Especially skincare.
you know, the maintenance of the website, the fulfillment centers, the developing new products, the photo shoots,
Digital
the videos, the
marketing,
social media. I
Paid
mean,
advertising.
I think to do a beauty brand correctly, just to launch, I think you would need at least $1 million
Minimum, I would say
right? And
baseline.
if you have that and you're comfortable doing that, then yes, go ahead and do that.
Mhm.
But my suggestion would be get some traction first. Don't
Right.
just do it like what we did. No one knew who we were. Right. We just really believed in ourselves so much. And I believed in Alexis and the way that she spoke about beauty, because on that first date, what I identified and why I brought up the intellectual piece of my therapist is that I knew that she had a literacy of beauty that was so deep and that could help so many people. And that's what we invested in.
Right.
Right. And
it was
that's
very
what I
much
believed in.
mental health oriented.
Right. But, you know,
A
like,
mission.
along the way, finding the right people. I mean, off the podcast, I can tell you guys so many stories
Oh
about
my
people
God.
that effed us over, you know, just wanting money to milk founders and, you know, really didn't come through with the promises that they said they would deliver on, right? So it's really tough out there, and it's hard to discern who's going to do the job right for you. And I think there's a lot of people just doing money grabs for founders, and it's really hard to find the right team, especially when you're bootstrapped. And I think when you have investment, it's easier to make these decisions and to move swiftly than when you have your own money. You
Also,
know?
they come from a world of having done this
Sure,
before.
right.
They have networks, they have people in place. We've learned all
Right,
this. And I
right.
shared this actually at the makeup show with someone who came up to us.
Yeah.
She was really worried about taking on investment. I said, okay, it could be angel investment. It doesn't have to be
would take the
institutional
investment.
capital. And she said, won't I lose creative freedom? I said, well, sometimes your budget restricts creative freedom. In the same way a theoretical investor would, at least the investor is
Exactly.
it's like putting bumpers on to play bowling.
Yeah.
So bumpers are a safety net. There's no shame in bumpers.
And also, there's a chance that it could go your way.
Correct.
Right.
If you don't have the budget yourself, then
There's
there's
no
not
chance.
there's no chance.
No
Right,
chance, right.
exactly. And you know, I'm coming from a place of we literally almost hit bankruptcy.
Mhm.
Oh
Like
my
we
gosh.
were
6 months
really,
after our wedding.
really close. I mean, it was to the point where right before we went viral, you were calling bankruptcy lawyers.
Oh
and it
yeah,
was,
and we
you
like to be
know,
really
just
transparent
very
about that.
transparent about this because we believed in ourselves so much that we poured all of our money into this. But like, that's a really silly decision,
It is.
you know. And also, like, we're older, we wanted to start a family. And I remember
Mhm.
in September 2023, right before we went viral, I was thinking to myself, like, how are we going to do this? Like, we just got married. We were literally calling bankruptcy lawyers. Like, I don't know. Like, this brand literally took us out. Like, we were going to have to close the brand. And
Which is
then
really devastating when
it
you've poured,
was.
you know,
it was
everything.
so devastating.
and,
you
and your
know,
life into it.
Look, I think the quality of being a founder is being relentless, and we are totally relentless, you know. And again, when we went into store that day, I mean, it's a crazy story. You also like got let go of your job and then
Yeah.
lost half your hearing, and then
Yeah.
we went viral, which is just
Yeah.
absolutely
All within a
insane.
period of like wedding is July, and then bankruptcy lawyer conversations start in September.
Right.
By December, an opportunity that I had with a client that I'd been working with for 5 years was supposed to be a full-time position. It just kept getting pushed until it became a non-existent opportunity.
Right.
So literally within 2 days of each other, hearing loss first. I'm still trying to figure out what it was that created the hearing loss. And then I'm literally walking out to go to like a doctor's appointment, and I get a call abruptly one day. And that was the end
Right.
of a 5-year relationship, but also of what I thought was my big next opportunity that I had been waiting for. And this is another lesson. You never sit and wait for anyone else's dream, and you never sit and wait, and you never ever listen to promises that might be unfulfillable.
100%.
Not even because the person has ill intentions, because they don't know.
Yeah.
But I also think, to be fair, that you were holding on to that opportunity because you were comfortable hiding behind someone
Correct.
else's shadow.
So
you
there's
know?
fear.
So that's something to acknowledge too.
There is.
right?
There was me hiding. There was me hiding parts of myself. There was me terrified to step out of a shadow and take risks, especially because our brand wasn't the success that I imagined or hoped it would be.
Yes.
There was shame in that. There was shame in facing bankruptcy. There was shame in failing my wife, who was looking at me like, so what do we do now? And I was like, well, that's a great question.
Scary time. It was a really scary time.
And this is where I would say, like, I think of Gary Vee often
Yes.
because
Gary V,
Gary
man.
Vee, man.
yeah, I can't wait to meet this man.
Vaynerchuk. The only man that matters in our world.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be a tornado when the three of you get together.
But
That's what I
realistically,
found Gary Vee. Yeah, the summer we got married.
That
NFT
really,
boom.
I think that for Christina, she finished her PhD and she
I did.
replaced all that energy and time that she spent studying. She replaced it with Gary's lessons. And
Digital
she got
marketing.
me hooked too. We ended up going to one of his conferences before our wedding.
Yeah.
VCon, the first or the second VCon, I think it was.
Yeah, no,
But
the first.
It was the first, right? So it gave me buy-in to social media, that conference, his conference. Because before, I literally despised social media. I never opened TikTok. I resented it. I perceived it in the wrong way.
Well, it's because she used to watch influencers and she used to scream at her phone and she used to be like, how? Why? Give me more. You're not explaining it. You know?
It would make me so
But then I would turn around
angry.
and say to her, I was like, so you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You
she
know?
would say this to me, and then that would piss me off even more because I didn't know how.
You're used to hiding. You're used to
Mhm.
being
Behind
in
the scenes.
Exactly,
Exactly.
in the shadow. So you're
Mhm.
like, but it's also
And then-
the fear of being perceived.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Putting yourself out there.
I don't
and
wanna
being
put words in your
vulnerable.
No,
mouth, but
absolutely.
That's
And then
100%.
how do you even,
Right.
how do you give away? You're literally legally, contractually not allowed to disclose any of what you do
Yeah.
as a product developer. And every single product developer that works at a strategic or any major mainstream brand that people love, they're not allowed really to disclose anything. So it puts you at this, you're afraid to lose your job. And you will get, you will get called out in a way too. Like things I'm sure are shifting since and we will definitely talk about that a little.
I definitely
Yes,
think
yes.
things are
So-
shifting.
And I just want to say one thing about the FemPower, because you brought up a good point about why. I think what our mistake was with FemPower and doing a lot of reflection is that we didn't fail fast.
Correct.
Right. And I think that's what a lot of founders, to the advice of like, yeah, you could bootstrap your brand, but just fail quickly. Because what we did is that we held on to something for so long and poured so much money into something that
It's like we had to
should have
fail
pivoted.
in 7 ways,
But
not
like,
one.
The truth is that the minute we let go, like don't give up, but maybe don't give up looks a little differently. Maybe it's not don't give up on the same idea. If something's not working, acknowledge it's not working and then move to something else, right? And try something else. Because the second that we let go of the idea of FemPower, that we were going to close it, that fine, we don't have the funds for it anymore. We need to figure out, maybe you need to get another job.
Yep.
You got
I was looking at full-time jobs.
and then
I was
she
on
starts
LinkedIn.
talking about a product that's not our own and we go viral. And then all of a sudden the Lipstick Lesbians, right? Lesbians that own lipstick, because we started the handle because I wanted to get ourselves out there as the founders of this company, took completely new meaning, right? So we still didn't give up, but it looked a little different. And that's the advice for founders, really, that want to start and do something on their own. Like you could do it, but like be mindful because it's your own money. Like it can get expensive really quickly and it can go detrimental really fast. Like what we did was not necessarily smart because
No.
you may not go viral, right? But
Right.
again, it may look different,
Yeah.
I just have to say, and this is a bold statement. This is the best conversation we've had on this podcast. It's 27 minutes in. Okay. I wish we had 4 hours. This is going to be one of our best, if not best episodes.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys know what you're doing. You're used to being on camera. You're used to
Yeah.
talking. You're used to educating. You're thinking about the listener. I'm sure our listeners are like, oh my God, I'm taking notes
Yeah.
right now. But I am so fulfilled. I'm just sitting back like,
I know, me
tell me
too.
more. Tell me more.
But there's like so many reasons why we love you guys, and the fact that like the thing that you said when you were like we were watching these influencers and you wanted to like scream at them.
Yes.
That's like one of the main reasons why we started this podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because as journalists and, beauty reporters, we're trained to test a product a certain way.
Fact check.
Fact check,
Mhm.
interview the
Mhm.
founders, the product developers, tell the story behind it. And there was so much of that not happening. And so
Yeah.
we were like, we need to
And
we
even
need to
just
educate.
yeah, just
Mhm.
going back to how do you properly test some of these like I remember, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but Tati Westbrook tried the Dyson Airwrap and she didn't try it properly and she
Right.
said it was shit. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm
Yes.
screaming at my I'm like, do I make a troll account at this point to be
Right.
like, you're using it wrong? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
You can make a whole podcast episode of us just saying user error. We
Yeah.
talk about it all the
It's a
time.
huge problem.
It's
And
our
so
buzzword.
much.
it's a lapse of education.
Right.
And it starts at the brand level, but and then it just trickles into the influencer marketing space. And we've talked about this.
And there's gaps that exist inside
massive
the
gaps.
industry that cause this as well. It's like, and I think, a lot of the times it's the philosophy of the brand. Like sometimes you'll have a marketing department that's separate from the product development department. And, sometimes they'll be the same. Right. So like, what is the philosophy of the brand and what is the outcome of that product? And then, on our side, what's really interesting for you, right, is that you were a part of those product development teams at the company, but now you're on the influencer
Mhm.
side, but we're still in like the B2B space still.
Mhm.
But we get the briefs from the company and it's so clear when the briefs are not communicated to the people that are making the formulations.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
vice versa. And then like there's a lot of times that we'll take partnerships with brands and we won't follow the brief at all. And we'll teach the marketing teams more about the product than the brief had.
Including
Yes.
the
Oh my
influence, especially
Yes.
if they're influencer
Yes.
marketers and not product marketers.
Exactly.
100%. And I also think that, Sarah and I both make content as well, right?
Yeah.
And we do sponsored content, but we have to try the products first. So
Absolutely.
many influencers are not, so many content
Yes.
creators are not, and
Yes.
they really aren't in that space. I can't tell you how many different reviews of products in the last month that I've seen where people are trying something and saying that it's terrible or didn't work. And I'm like, that is not how this product is supposed to work.
Right.
Right.
And it really is an education thing.
They
Mhm.
don't read the brief at all.
Mhm.
Right. And then also, I think Sarah and I, too, to y'all's point, also, we have the wherewithal where we're going, why are they marketing it this way?
Right.
Mhm.
This is weird.
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And
It-
maybe
It's actually better if we do it this way. Now, it's up to the brand if they really, it's kind of like take it or leave it. Like, this is how we're going to
Correct.
talk about this
Mhm.
product because we feel like this is the most beneficial. It's not on brand for us
Yeah.
to say any of these things that you guys are really trying to. Sometimes they get ahead of themselves with the messaging. They're like, this message has to be out there, and you're like, but that's not going to resonate with people,
right.
and that's
Yeah.
not actually how this product is going to work the best.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, we're hitting 30 minutes. I want to make sure we get through some of these listener questions because literally they will kill us if we don't at least get to a few of them. We're going to kick things off with Emily Buckland. Okay. She says, why do some products' actual colors look different in the packaging than when applied?
That was a great question.
For example, do certain types of glass, frosted or etc., make the color of the foundation appear different than when once it looks like pumped out? Or like Kirby's example of the rare contour, why can a color change so much once applied?
Mhm.
We have
I've-
to talk about that product.
I've been talking a lot. I do love this Rare Beauty contour. I think
Yeah.
it's a beautiful product. However, I use it as a bronzer
Yes.
because
Mhm.
even though it looks cool toned, when I put it on my face,
Yeah.
even when I dab it on my face, when I blend it out,
Mhm.
it turns warm.
But what
Totally.
was the intention behind that for the brand?
So first and foremost, anytime you see something frosted, usually it's an indication that when the brand did something called compatibility testing, which means it's basically the brand testing the marriage of the package and the bulk, that they would have seen perhaps some aesthetic kind of unsexiness that they want to soften, and the frost softens the aesthetic unsexiness.
Okay.
When you see clear glass, it's because the brand wants you to see the shade. And typically, right, even if it's clear plastic, especially when you think about mass market, that's their best way to sell a product because there's no testers in the United States. We know in other countries there are, but in the US, if it's in clear, it's so that the user can see the color. The
Got it.
mass tone is what we call that. Now, anytime you introduce a silicone or a volatile material into a type of base, you're immediately going to see what we call a mass tone and dry down variation. So literally, as a product developer, you need to assess the mass tone and the tone at dry down, because I can't tell you how many projects I've worked on where you're literally ping-ponging back and forth with a chemist, right? And this is happening especially during the time of the pandemic over email and videos, where you're evaluating the shade, what it is wet. But that shade is totally different when it dries. Yeah. So when you think back to Fenty, and a lot of consumers know this as oxidation.
Yes.
If you were to ask a chemist, is oxidation real? They know that as a consumer-facing word. It's not really oxidizing per se. The color is drying, and it's drying to a finished tone. And the reason for that is the raw materials. Again, silicones and volatiles, which are typically very present inside of liquid foundations. In the case of a liquid formula like Rare's Contour, so how did we get to market with that? I have a philosophy. I don't know the product development team. This is my personal opinion, but I've like studied the ingredient listing. I've looked at the most successful blush at Sephora right now is Rare Beauty's as of the time of this recording.
Yep.
They took that wildly successful formula base and they infused a little bit more of what we would consider like a film former or film forming polymer. And that is what's going to give the contour, and I'm using air quotes, for those that don't love calling it a contour, let's call it a bronzer.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
cute.
The bronzer definitely has that difference on dry down because it has more performance than the blush. And that is a technical explanation as to why the formula is drying down a little differently. We made an entire piece of content about this, and I literally showcased one side of my face specifically with the shift, and then I took basic blue pigment from the Makeup Forever Flash palette, my vintage palette, and I showcased how we can turn something like this to be cool toned. So it's not that you can't have this formula, the Rare formula, be cool toned. It's that, think back to the philosophy of the Rare Beauty brand. It's about accessible beauty. It's about easy to use beauty. If I were to blindfold myself, I can blend that product onto my face.
Totally.
So do we think about the end user and the consumer? I would love, personally, for Rare Beauty to panel test their community as to whether or not they prefer the warmth that it dries down to or they don't. And that, to me, is what's not happening in beauty right now.
Yes. Okay.
Brands are not having the conversation with the end user. The products are going to the internet, and it's like the internet's having its way with it.
I feel like it's like that, what is that hive mentality too?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like there's going to be a big message that's understood about this
Correct.
contour, right? And then that's it, right? But,
But-
like it's
but
the education that needs to...
The education is missing in a sense that this goes to market, right? And then the product can become grossly misunderstood really fast.
Yes.
But the question is, does that hurt the brand or help the brand? That's
Yeah.
the real question.
Yeah.
And did more people, and this goes back to Lashgate, because Lashgate, for me personally, that was the
Kirby's
first...
like,
Okay.
That was the first time I participated in a viral movement where rampant, virality took over, and it blew my mind. I sat back, I watched, I listened.
It was also month one of a
It was month
virality,
one, so
like,
I
super
was
early.
not in a position of power at all, nor did I necessarily feel the need to go on to a platform and kind of call somebody out or call anybody out for that matter.
You both do a great job of making sure that
Yeah, you really do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the intention, and I believe, and this goes back to even a quick note on how hard I do believe it is to be an influencer.
Yeah.
Because I will validate, if every single career I've had in this industry, this is the hardest I've ever worked in my
Agreed.
life.
Totally.
Specifically, there's so much that's out of our control. And the truth is, when I reflect on the influencers, I reflect on who is going to teach them these things, how there is no handbook. We're in the infancy of the influencer era. So I'm not even blaming the influencer. And after 2 years and a few months, I blame more so the brands for lacking to educate the content creators and then letting the internet have its way, because specifically what's happening is, again, these are hitting the market, the internet's having its way, but again, is it hurting or helping the brand? We don't know. We don't know what's happening over at Rare. Again, we don't know. We do know that L'Oreal probably sold more mascaras because of Lashgate than they would have had there not been a scandal. We know that.
I went
Totally.
and bought it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
went and bought it.
And
I said, I have to
everyone-
know. I'm not going to wait for PR. I
Right.
need to have it now.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have it, and we're gonna buy it, and we need to have the conversation. But what is the resolution?
Yeah.
Have we learned anything?
Totally.
Has the brand learned anything? Have we shifted the industry? Or are we feeding TikTok in a way, and YouTube and Instagram in a way that's putting money in advertisers' pockets or these platforms' pockets or these parent companies' I don't even know who owns what, in the TikTok world. It's confusing to me. In Meta's pockets, right? In Google's pockets. And great, let's let everyone get paid. But really, like at the human level, does that 13-year-old girl or boy or human going to buy the Rare Beauty contour, do they know what the hell they're doing? And do they know if it's good or bad? And more importantly, do they know if it's for them?
Yes.
Right.
So does
Right.
that frustrate you at all as a product developer and an influencer?
Yes, it does. Because we should all be endeavoring to decipher this market for the user. And you could do that through art. You could do that through the way you apply it. You could do that through jokes. You could do that, like Christina Kirkman makes comedy. She makes beauty comedic, and I love it. I love watching it. It's fun. Everybody brings their art to the platform. Bring your art, bring your community, and at least give a point of view, whether it's your skin tone, your application technique, your hack, your personality. But don't just jump on a viral movement or a viral moment for the sake of virality, which is very much what a lot of
Feels
influencers
empty.
have to do.
Yeah.
Are you in my head? Literally, I just went on a rant about this
Yeah.
because I'm like,
And we're influencers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're allowed to say this, I guess.
Alexis doesn't love that word, but
but no, and
Yeah.
I don't either.
Yeah.
But I do have respect. Like I call myself a content creator.
Yes,
me
I
too.
have a lot of respect for people who do call themselves influencers, who are able to sell. If you can sell a product and a lot of it, that is a trait that is valuable.
Absolutely.
So I have a lot of respect for it. But I do have problems when I see people jumping on a bandwagon to do something just because it's viral at the moment and it'll get them engagement.
Correct.
That's a personal
Yeah.
vendetta I have against people.
Me too.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
like
yeah.
it. It feels not altruistic to like the common good of the community.
right.
I think this situation with Rare, people love Rare's products.
Yeah.
And even though I don't see it as I still use a contour even when I use that product,
Yeah.
I still love that product.
Great.
I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah.
using it
Oh, yeah.
every day.
That's great.
It's
Yeah.
still easy for
yeah.
me to apply to
Yeah.
my face.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, the 13-year-old going into Sephora is just like, I want to look bronze. I think that Rare Beauty has one. So
It's pretty.
maybe their messaging about it being a contour has been like lost in the sauce now,
Yeah.
but people are still probably buying it and
Oh, for
using it
sure.
without
Yeah.
it goes back to like the intended use. Like they're not
Right.
using it the way it's
Yeah.
supposed to be
I think
intended
there's
for.
definitely a lack of education around that launch, though.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Do you think it's just because we need to move on to the next question? But I'm like, because it's just they're like brands need to get product out quickly so they don't miss the opportunity.
It's systemic. It's systemic, and it's very much so multifaceted, and it's so much deeper than we even have the time to like delve into. But it always at the end of the day is going to boil down to the industry and commerce. This is a commerce driven market, right? Sephora, Ulta, Amazon, Walmart. These are the players of the game. Who's doing the best right now, right? Who's doing the best brick and mortar? Who's doing the best, online? And then these platforms are feeding those retailers. And then it's a game. Who has mastered it and when they're in the number one slot and for how long they're in the number one slot? That is the question, and that is the ever evolving game. And at the end of the day, do the consumers care about that?
Yeah.
I don't know. What I do know is that every person that's in our DMs wants help.
Yes.
So
No,
that's
a lot
what
of
we're
help.
going to provide
Yeah.
to the best of our ability.
And lots of questions.
Right.
Yes. Okay,
So-
speaking of, next
Yeah.
question from Mallory Gendron. Why did replacing talc with mica ruin, capital ruin, certain blushes? Looking at you, NARS and Tarte, but other blushes formulated without talc performed just fine. Was it a rush job on their parts, or does mica have a terrible color payoff compared to talc?
Okay,
a
wait,
good
but hold on. I just
question.
want to say, I like the new NARS formulation.
It's nice.
Yeah.
But I have seen people say that, oh, this was patchy. I don't like it as much. But when they launched it, I'm like all in.
Do
Yeah.
you think it's just because people are used to the
Old
original?
version.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so what are your thoughts?
This is a you question.
Yeah, I'm like,
I know.
who cares about what,
What are you
I
gonna
think?
say?
I'm laughing. So we
you were a
were
NARS girly too. You worked for NARS for 8
I
years.
worked for NARS for
Yes.
8 years. I know that formula. The original blush formula, that and the original bronzer formula is probably better than most, I would say. So it's really important to understand that when we're talking about powder, you have to understand the fundamentals of powder in terms of the raw materials. They're all primarily for the base white. And I mean really, really white.
Oh, really?
So mica is really, really, it's actually a little dirty looking. It's almost yellow cream beige. But there are, when you go to the supermarket and when you're ready to buy ketchup or salad dressing, how many options from brands do you have? Is Heinz the best ketchup? Is it Hunt's, or I don't even know the other brands? So let's call it tomato sauce, because at least I could think of 10 of those types of brands.
Yeah.
Totally.
They all have tomatoes. Some of them are all Italian tomatoes. Some of them are not, blah, blah, blah. The point is, you can choose 50 different micas. You can go to 50 different raw material suppliers. There will be a variance in the tone of your mica based on what vendor you're buying it from. There's also a category of mica called synthetic mica.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does mica vary in its color, which impacts the base, which impacts the payoff, which impacts everything, the texture, the sensoriality, you also have to consider the level of pearl. So synthetic micas sometimes come with a level of pearl that the traditional talc certainly does not have. So it's never a simple, okay, NARS, and why does NARS have to take talc out of their blush? It is a brand decision, but talc is being primarily phased out because of the number of lawsuits that brands have been under, primarily led by J&J, having to do some crazy payout. So brands have a little bit of fear inside of them now, so they're taking out talc as a precautionary measure. But Huda Beauty's Easy Bake still has talc in it. A lot of products on the market.
Doesn't Charlotte's?
I was going to say
Yeah.
Charlotte still has talc. And talc works really well at absorbing oil, at being smooth, and as an opacifying agent. They used to use talc in lipsticks to make it more opaque, like classic bullets. So you remove talc, and most importantly, talc was cheap, but good, stable, right? Like a reliable boyfriend, girlfriend,
Yes.
partner. So now we have to not just remove talc, one single ingredient, and replace it with one single ingredient. You need to restructure your whole entire recipe. Like tomato sauce, one brand may be more liquid, one other brand may be more thick. If you're doing diced tomatoes versus crushed tomatoes and you're making a sauce, you have to adjust the viscosity if it's going to be a cream sauce or if it's going to have body and texture. Same situation. They need to make adjustments that are going to then reflect how does the product pick up, how does it lay down, how opaque, how much opacity does it have, right? And they can't just swap one thing out. They need to rebalance the whole thing. And the worst part for every brand is that it's going to cost more in 99% of instances. So it's a balancing act. It's a cost of goods exercise, because the last thing you would want is for a better powder to come out, but for them to have to charge you $5 more. And in many cases, the cost of goods that they have to rectify or recover will be a number, like they have to incur the cost of goods, meaning that it went up more, it became more expensive, and they have to not charge you more. So it's a game. It goes back to the money. And ultimately, like, to me, again, I think they did a great job with the NARS blush. I would have wanted to see them push it and go a little further into maybe a next generation powder. Some of what we're seeing hit the market soon, if not already. But NARS made a very strategic decision. Powder blush, Orgasm namely, built their business.
Totally.
They can't take their number one selling product and make it unrecognizable and appease the consumer and still be like, it's a really tall order is what I have to say. And I don't envy the product developer that reformulated that blush personally.
Totally. That's a great explanation. Thank you for that. Okay. This is from Susan DeBorsey. Which product or formulas are the most challenging to get right? And which do you feel brands have not been able to nail down yet?
Wow. That's
Christina actually is a little product developer, and I'm laughing because we're fresh off the makeup show.
I know. We just got off the makeup show, Makeup in LA.
But that's a
I don't
really
know.
good
I think I
question.
know what you're going to say, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but
it might be your favorite category to develop.
Complexion.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so.
Mascara and complexion are the two hardest. I'd say mascara is the hardest because you have to marry not just two elements. When I say two elements, I mean a package and a formula, and then the gesture of that. You have to marry the package where the bulk sits. You have to marry the wiper. The wiper has to have the right size hole. Then you have to marry the brush and make sure that enough product is released when you pull it through a wiper. And then simultaneously, you're worrying about the variable that is even harder than skin in some instances, which are people's hair types, eyelashes.
Right.
Yeah.
So those elements all put together make for a really, really, really hard development.
And it's super personal
Very.
and individualized.
Mhm.
Very.
Then you have complexion, which
Mhm.
I think that you did an excellent video when the Euphoria drama all went down. I
Mhm.
really appreciated that video. I still see people in comments or in my Instagram DMs going, why can't I find a foundation that actually matches my skin tone? Like to this day, it's 2025. Like, have we not figured this out? Because for instance, I love Fenty products, but I still cannot find an exact
A
shade
little
match.
too like red.
Yes.
Well, warm for you.
Yes, it leans too warm for me. And that's like traditionally my problem. If I go cooler, it can look like
Muddy?
Yes. And it makes me look like
Dead.
decrepit, you know, like a corpse.
Mhm.
Or like I'm, auditioning for the Jersey Shore, no shade to
Yeah.
Snooki or JWoww.
So
But
what's
like,
your favorite foundation?
so right now I've been
I love the
using-
right now.
Yeah.
I'm a right now
Yes,
girl.
right now.
So I have my tried and true favorites. I use Armani Luminous Silk.
Okay.
Okay.
You're classic.
I'm a very classic girl. But then I love the Valentino.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're reformulating it.
Because it's D5, cyclopentasiloxane, probably the original.
Okay.
So they have to. That's another talc.
You're giving me some intel that I did not have. I just was like bawling that they got rid of it, that they're reformulating. I use their concealers now. So usually I will go and do my foundation on the perimeter of my face, which is not what makeup artists tell you to do. And then I do the concealer everywhere else and then blend it together based on that. And then kind of just like zhuzh my neck and stuff. But I don't ever feel like I get an exact shade match, period, ever.
It's hard.
Do you too? Surely you guys have found an exact shade match, or you still have to zhuzh sometimes?
I have like she always shade matches me. Just spoiled.
Christina's like, I'm good.
Lucky.
I'm good, babes. I'm taken care of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the funniest thing about foundation is that people don't realize that predominantly 90% of what's on the market, maybe 85, depending on who we're talking about, outside of the L'Oreal group, for example. And by group, I mean all the brands they own, specifically use 4 pigments when they're developing. It's yellow, red, black, white. That's it. It's the big secret. And this is when you reflect on that, you also have to know what the shades of those colorants like are, right? It's not a sunshine yellow. It's a, Grey Poupon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's a little dirty. And the reds also have variances. And specifically going back to what we said earlier, when you're including the silicones and the volatiles to help things dry down and to help things wear longer, it's going to adjust the shade. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what level of wizardry and Hogwarts chemistry beauty you've achieved. This is a physically impossible task. We are also, something I want to put in everyone's mindset is that we're becoming more blended as a society. More ethnicities are becoming pollinated,
Right.
for lack of a better word.
Yep.
And as such, where we have more skin tone options for human skin than we've ever had before in history. We also have more beauty brands than we've ever had before in
Right,
history. And
yeah.
yet we still have
This
these
problem.
holes.
And this is research that was actually presented to you in Science back by
Oh,
L'Oreal,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And it's also logical. And if you understand society and population growth and how people are blending in terms of their families, you'll understand this. And you look at like a perfect example of this is like someone who did this in the hair care category. She had a blended family. Mindy Knight, Heritage, blended family, blended hair care, 7 different shampoo bottles, right? Suddenly we have this new age style texture of hair that never existed before in our culture. And it necessitated a new development of hair care. So we are at a point, an inflection point, where AI needs to advance enough, and Korea is starting this for sure. You can go and get your custom shade of Laneige matched, right? For cushion foundation.
Yes.
But it's really, really complex, pun intended, right? So there will be a time in, I believe, our history, in our future rather, that all of us will be able to walk into a store, have some photograph taken of our skin, and have a custom blend of foundation come that actually is our skin tone. Yes, there have been brands that have tried to do this. Yes,
Like Lancome.
Yeah, the Lancome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the only time I ever got
Yeah.
one.
Lancome. Yes, there's Prescriptives back in the day tried to do a version of this, like circa like early 2000s, late 90s.
Ahead of the curve.
RIP Prescriptives, they were once owned by Estee Lauder. They were like, an indie of their time.
Yes, totally.
So because I'm sure some people may not know what prescriptives
Yeah,
is,
no,
sadly.
100%.
We do name drop them quite a bit on this podcast, though, I will say. We love them.
So everything is going to get better. Technology is going to evolve. It's really an invitation for you to explore. And it's why we need the content creators to be as diverse as they are and to speak and to try new products. But I will say that like ultimately you buying a base like House Labs is 00, 000, it's going to allow you to blend things out, especially if you're struggling in the lighter category.
I do love House Labs.
Yeah.
I will
Yes.
say
And
that.
yeah,
I think
their
they have done
foundation
a
is really, really
beautiful
good.
job. And
Yes.
I tip my hat. We both tip our hat to them for that rebrand because
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
it
Talk
went
about
from
elevating.
this to this.
Yes.
And
it really
Sarah
did.
Tano is amazing. We
Yeah,
love her.
She's
She's
incredible.
So yeah,
Besides that, is there a brand that you think does like
an exceptional shade range.
Yes.
I mean, I bring up House Labs because
Oh,
they've
yes,
done
yes.
an exceptional job. And
Also, we need to shout out Gloria Ryu because she's a product
She's the
developer
product
behind the
developer
scenes.
who
We
leads
love her.
innovation.
Yeah, she leads innovation.
she does an incredible job, and she's one of the best product developers in the industry of our time right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah, she's
behind the
amazing.
scenes,
I will say, when they launched that product, it was really difficult for us to figure
out
out
what
what
it
shade
was.
we
I
were.
know.
Because their color wheel, it felt backwards in a way.
it's different,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. And I read it, and I see it as and I see the colors, and I see the shade families, and I see it all very
Yeah.
differently. So I respect and understand that.
Yeah.
It's not as easy, and there's a lot of options. And the more options you have, the harder it is.
Yeah.
What I want to invite everyone to do is find their foundation shade and whatever it is, whatever they use, count inside the shade range. If it's a 40 shade range, if it's where do you stand in your existing foundation that you own? Are you 15 in? Are you 20 in? Are you 40 in? Are you 50 in? Where you live inside a brand's range, understand that the brands are oftentimes benchmarking other brands, especially if you're buying things that have been launched within the last 2, 3, 4 years. So if you are 15 deep in a certain range that's 40, chances are you're going to be within 3 shades of that
Okay.
at other brands. Start there.
I love
And
that
then
tip.
Yeah.
navigate undertone, of course, but primarily your shade family, how you find that, it's the numbers. This is how brands develop. Yes, then you're going to be inside a family. You're either fair, light, medium deep, or dark, typically. And there's some variation of that at every brand because it's almost like someone at some point, it was probably L'Oreal, developed this framework for how to market foundations in these shade families, especially as we went from 12 to 50 or 40, and bam. So, but the shade navigation is numerical. The counting is easy to start within 3 shades of that. And then if you have no idea what your undertone is, buy neutral. If you've tried a foundation in the cool family before and you look dead, then you're not cool.
Yeah.
It's that easy. Forget about the veins. Yes, there's relevancy. Yes, it's real. If you want it to be super simple, it's like go to the store, swatch a cool, swatch a warm, blend it in. You're gonna know one is gonna disappear better than the other. Whatever disappeared better, that's your family of undertone.
Totally.
And it might be different for the next brand because brands have different bases, and different bases yield different colors and different dry downs, like we talked about.
This is from Christy Roy. This is a topic that I feel like we have been nonstop talking about and hearing. It's been in our DMs and in our Slack. How are tariffs affecting the development process? What does it take to produce something new and innovative? Like, how much does it cost? How long does it take before production starts? Like how are tariffs going to affect this whole process?
You know, before you take that question, I just want to say I think it's so interesting that this tariff conversation is happening because the thing that made us go viral was turning the bottle around and having Alexis guess where something is made.
Yes.
And we're the ones that really were the catalyst to people really turning their products around and being like, oh, it's made in Italy, it's made in Korea, and then asking questions about what these mean and being able to explain it.
Yeah.
So I think, and you know, just coming off the makeup show where you're seeing all these vendors from all around the world present their products to the brands that are going to then buy these products and modify and then launch, you see the Korean manufacturers, Italian manufacturers, USA manufacturers. And to me, it's just really interesting that, you know, the tariff conversation is having this impact specifically in the USA, because your answer to me from what you told me the other day about the way it's going to impact Made in USA blew my mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are strategic ways, right, that brands can navigate the tariff, meaning the tariff involves China specifically. It's gonna impact a huge part of how people do businesses, especially if their production ends in China. So, like the vast majority of packaging is made in China. Even companies that have assembly lines in the USA. Some companies have assembly lines in the Dominican Republic. Really, brands that are made in China are going to be impacted the most, because if you take a Chinese package, and by that I mean a package that was made and produced in China, and you ship it to an Italian contract manufacturer, and they fill that package with the Italian bulk, and they put a label on it that then says made in Italy.
Which happens all the time.
This is what happens.
This is the way it works.
You bypass a tariff in that way. But if you are a brand who was made in PRC and you had imported goods, imported of both globally imported materials, you could have imported all of your raw materials from Japan and Korea and had your assembly done in China, because assembly is 90% of the time cheapest in China.
Which happens all the time too.
So Korea is also a great example of people having better assembly costs. So when you break down a formula, it's called a BOM, like a bill of materials.
Okay.
Bill of materials is like you going to the supermarket and buying all your ingredients for Thanksgiving dinner. You still have to drive those ingredients from Whole Foods or Erewhon or wherever you're buying your ingredients to your house. So you have to pay for gas. You have to pay for a portion of your car payment to get your goods to the house. Then you need to buy pots and pans and yada yada to cook the meal. So you go from your bill of material, then and I'm by no means an operations person. I'm giving you like a wide overview, but specifically you then have to think about there's line items for everything. Your price of your product is impacted by how many people are on the assembly line assembling your goods. So for example, there are vendors right now that we visited in Italy in November that have insane robots automating.
Yeah,
they even have robots automating how they pull the raw materials from the shelves, so you have less humans operating the system, which is going to bring your assembly cost down compared to an assembly line that's driven by humans. So you have to understand, when I say there's a line item that comes with a price that all impacts your overarching cost of goods, your raw materials impact your cost of goods, the choices you make on your raws, which mica are you putting in? Then it's who and what factory is assembling. Do they have robots or people? Do they have streamlined operations, or are they a hot mess, basically? Then, and this is again loose overviews for you, but
Totally.
it all boils down to like all of these facets, and ultimately, again, things that are, for example, if you were shipping your package from China to the USA, and the product, you still have to get the product through the US. That's the tariff problem. And from what I've understood, the tariff's gone from 25% to potentially 35%. So what this means in very short answer, it's going to cost more money to produce. It's either going to cost brands more money to find the loopholes. It's going to cost brands money and time to figure out the rules. It's going to cost brands time and just time, because clearly there's a reason this has been implemented, and it's not to make everyone's lives harder, but it's to bring production to other parts of the world.
But the thing with the USA thing is, because the packaging's made in China,
It's got to come through.
Specifically made in USA is going, I mean, yes, all around,
Yeah.
but specifically made in USA, I think, and we forecast, is probably not going to be as popular.
Right.
Right.
Because, and it's like the adverse effect that's wanted by this administration.
Right.
We want to bring production to the USA, but most packaging with cosmetics was made in China. So it's going to deter people.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
And
That's
they're
the
going to be
forecast.
looking for, and this goes back to, it's going to cost them time and money to source and people to source packaging made in the USA,
Yeah.
which is
So
way
detrimental.
more expensive, and the
Yeah.
consumer is going to feel that too. So this is, and again, there's not one human in the world that has every single one of these answers, because a lot of these rules are still being written.
Yeah.
But we're in a really unique position where that uncertainty, that fear, that concern, money. It's going to cost more money, more time. It's going to delay products coming to market. It just is.
Carlene Del Rio, how is it that all brands come out with similar formulas from season to season? We love this question because we
talk
get
about
asked
this
it a
all the
lot.
time.
For instance, one brand will come out with a jelly lip, and then there will be like 20 other brands that come out with jelly lips or a similar product practically at the same time. How do they all know? Does a lab come up with the new formula and sell it to the highest bidder?
I
Does
love
this
this
kind
question.
of relate to the makeup show in a way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Partially, I would say partially relates to the makeup show.
For sure, yeah.
Right? Because you're seeing, right, in these makeup shows, there's these manufacturers from all over the world, and they're presenting the new formulas and their latest innovations. And you have brand founders and product development teams that are walking these shows and swatching these formulas and trying to pick up what's going to be the thing that represents our brand. And obviously, they take that formula and they modify it. So it's possible that you may have two brands picking up the same thing. But then again, remember, even though these individual manufacturers are presenting their things, they're all kind of competing, right? And so they're listening to what the customers are saying and what they've seen at the shows. And then they're developing newness too. So there's like manufacturers competing with each other with these latest formulations. But I think it has more to do with the retailers the more I've immersed myself in this
2025?
industry.
Yep. Because if you walk into any contract manufacturer's office today and you ask the head of innovation at that contract manufacturer what Sephora and Ulta want, they know. Because they get all the briefs, they're called. It's like the blueprint of a house, the briefs for the formulas from all the brands. So they will see 50 briefs for the same thing. And why are 50 briefs coming in from the same thing? Because Sephora has to merchandise a really cute, or Ulta has to merchandise a really cute end cap featuring 5 new setting powders, right? We all know, and I could probably recite to you what the little entry when you walk in, the little, how they it's merchandising, and right, they want to be cute and they want to make sure they have newness when you walk into the store, and they want to be on theme. So they know for years ahead, and they know the life cycles, and they're also trying to, in many ways, create this virality around a category. And we saw this with blush better than we've ever seen it. There was a 600% increase, I think, in the blush category last year, something obscene. And really, like, how much blush can one own? That's a question I genuinely have. But it created such virality and such FOMO, and it's guerrilla marketing, but it's like guerrilla retailing, and it's scary. And it creates stagnation, and I think we're stuck, and I think we really are being led by the retailers, and it's affecting and impacting innovation. And then you mush in the mashup of the confusion of virality and influencer marketing, and the state of the industry it's at a tipping point. And it's up to the experts to really be bold and brave and do something crazy and wild and different to shift the market.
I'm like,
Give me a high five. We've been saying this.
And we're working on it.
We're working on something. Yeah, it's interesting.
When the Givenchy powder drama happened last year, so many dramas last year, but when that happened, I mean, I was heartbroken. But I remember I went in to buy the last stock of the original powder from Sephora. And I remember talking to a cast member and going, man, it just really sucks that they're doing this. And I knew why they were doing it, but then the cast member just offered up and said, yeah, well,
you're going to have like 7 new setting powders coming this year.
Yes, and our entire campaign, we have this campaign that's going to go in the window of talc-free powders. So I think that's why and I go, thank you.
Yeah.
Popped on the podcast, start talking about it, and everyone's like, what the hell? But we talk about this a lot. They really are driving a lot more. And when it goes back to the talc thing too, obviously the J&J lawsuit, like a huge reason why, like they just don't want to even touch that. They're like, we'd rather get rid of it. But I do think a lot of it is the Sephoras and the Ultas, these big retailers driving this conversation. And then also the consumers, because they have heard these things and they freak out, even though there were studies done last year on products that contain talc that had no asbestos even remotely close to it. Like, we read them out aloud on this podcast. So they're good, but the consumer still hears talc and they immediately say, that's bad, that's going to kill me, give me cancer, whatever. And then that drives the conversation. And then maybe Sephora goes, okay, we just need to like
take it out.
Yeah, we had a conversation yesterday. It was hilarious with a vendor.
Loved the water-based and silicone. I was literally just thinking that. Yeah.
And you think about the whole supply and demand of beauty and the manufacturing. So they're doing research, market research. They're hiring trend forecasting agencies. They have their own trend forecasting agencies inside these hubs, most of these suppliers. And in this instance, we're having this conversation with a supplier, and we were sharing about misinformation online. How many infographics have you seen where it says water-based and silicone-based?
Oh my God, I cannot.
It's ridiculous.
And then not cross-pollinating the water-based product and then the silicone-based. First of all, it's not water-based. It's either a water and oil or an oil and water emulsion. That's first of all. And second of all, that's not real. That's misinformation. That has gone viral. That has been perpetuated by exactly the problem we talked about at the beginning of the show. And ultimately, they, as a supplier, saw such an uptick in search for water-based that they thought it was in fact a trend.
Yeah.
So now they're having to decipher between accidental viral misinformation. They are literally having
They
to
were telling us this
translate, and they were
yesterday.
telling us
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And they have to now navigate what the consumer is searching for.
And why are they searching for
Why
it?
are they searching for it? Which also leads to SEO, which also leads to the Spates of the world. And we love Spate.
Yeah.
But consumers don't. They know to search for niacinamide because they finally just learned how to spell it.
Right.
And I know this question came in. So everything's going to have niacinamide because the data is showing that consumers are looking for niacinamide because they've been told niacinamide is the only thing that's going to help their dark spots.
Yeah.
So now they're trained to go buy niacinamide in every single product. And now niacinamide is in your foundation. It's in your highlighter. It's in your skincare. It's everywhere.
And now I can't use
Yeah.
Easy Blur.
Which I was like,
no.
that's my current babe.
Dang it.
Yeah.
right.
Bummer.
And there's nothing wrong with niacinamide and there's nothing wrong with SEO. But the technology is shifting the landscape of consumers' behaviors.
Yeah.
And it's creating data sets that are not there. You're the researcher, babe. What do we call it? Qualitative versus quantitative?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
No one's doing the qualitative research. They're doing the
100%.
quantitative.
Yeah.
And it's flawed.
Right.
That's exactly
And they
right.
don't have these experts that are able to decipher that. They don't have the right people deciphering that.
But what's also interesting is the ability for people to go viral with the misinformation too.
That's the
like,
mind-blowing
like I think
thing.
there's so many people that do the water and silicone thing because they think they're helping people, or I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't even know if they're perpetuating
They have
misinformation.
no idea.
But they don't know what they don't know.
They
That's the thing.
exactly, but that's the
what
thing.
A lot of
Yeah.
cosmetic chemists get upset about is that people are like, oh, well, I read a study and they didn't realize there was only one study and
Yeah.
it was flawed and they didn't read it
And also,
properly.
do they know how to
exactly.
read a study?
Right,
Right,
like,
exactly.
Like they are not educated enough to even
Yeah.
understand what this study even
Yeah.
is saying.
But what's interesting too in that respect, and this goes back to there's not one person in the world that's an expert in the context of that will have all the answers.
Right.
It's true.
So this is really important to share. So for us, it was really challenging to come on platform and almost see people. You're going in kind of the chemists. I feel took this role. They felt that they had to take on the role of kind of like the teacher, right? And like let's
the
discipline
guardians,
the
of the
guardians.
industry.
Yes.
Let's discipline you all. But that is also a challenging role because it creates divisiveness, polarization. It creates these extremes. Nothing's black and white. You heard I'm going on and on and on, and I'm grazing the surface of the level of nuance.
There's so much nuance.
And what it's done is it's now for me, chemists who are constricted to 90 seconds or a minute on TikTok or 45 seconds, they're not even able to articulate the nuance. So they're like, we got to leave the
and
nuance
science
out.
is always evolving too, right?
That's the problem. So they're delivering this, accurate information to the extent that they know. And again, not everyone has all the answers, myself included. But they're delivering it in a consolidated little 45-minute window. And they're then in this positionality that now you've implanted in the mind of the consumer that it's that black and white,
Right.
that there is no
right.
nuance.
And then
Yeah,
people take that because they don't know what they don't know.
Correct.
They're looking to somebody else for this information. So then they just apply it to everything else.
Right, exactly.
And that's how misinformation. I mean, that's why
Exactly.
we're in the state we're in this country, to be completely
Correct.
honest.
I think it's always about reminding people of the nuance.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
And that I think that doesn't happen enough in
Yeah.
beauty.
And
in
if
the beauty
you
industry.
if you teach people, and like realistically, this is why we decided to birth the first endeavor, right? Content creators typically the first thing that they do after year 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how successful and viral they are, is some type of a merch drop or some type of a collab, right?
Right.
That would not be very on brand for the Lipstick Lesbians, would it?
No. But I would take merch.
Yeah.
We're working
Beauty
on
queen
it.
crowns.
Yes.
We're working on it.
Yes. Perfect.
So, but we are, we wanted to give the thing that we felt. Number one, that we heard our audience ask for more than anything. There was 2 things really. They asked for a podcast and a master class. So we built LLab first because we felt LLab would be more fruitful. And this is the Let's Learn About Beauty or Learning Lab or Lipstick Lesbian Androulakis Basias. It's all of those
Super
things.
cute.
Yeah.
And it's 8 hours of footage every single product format in every single product category, live evaluation demonstrations, a framework that Christina developed
Yes.
with her doctorate
Right.
around
Which really
how to,
differentiates, if you're a makeup artist, if you're someone in the industry, if you're a beauty enthusiast, or if you're just a consumer who's just starting out. This course is for everybody.
So
Like it's
cool.
that differentiated.
and it's
Yeah.
that nuanced.
Yeah.
And the point isn't, I'm going to tell you the answer. The bullseye of the framework is it worth the money? Does it work?
Yeah, and going back to the black and white,
Right.
like I know some content creators do like, is it approved, right? And that's part of this issue, right? 'Cause
Which is
like,
fun.
Yeah.
It's
and it's
fun,
and
it's
it's
fun.
personal, and I have no problem
Right.
with that because
As long
at least
as you go through the nuance,
Correct.
right, and explain who it's for. And I think that's where a lot of people really appreciate the content that we put out, because like through the explanation, it's just like Alexis will tell you whether or not she likes the product personally, but she'll also take you on the journey on who it's for while she's doing
Right.
that.
Exactly.
Correct.
you
Yes.
have to decide if it's worth the money because your budget's different.
Yep.
You have to learn how to evaluate, and this is why we built literal objective evaluation scales. There's a 200-page handbook that comes with this course. Go nuts, listing the ingredients out, what ingredients are driving what claim. Like, this is the most incredible product development course. And I could say this because I went to FIT and did the cosmetics and fragrance marketing program that has ever existed. And it was birthed from every pain point I've ever had in the 20 years I've been doing this with
Oh my
Christina's
gosh.
help.
Sorry, and I sighed because
Yes.
because I was like, it's just so good to hear someone say this.
No,
Aw.
this is amazing. Is it available now?
In like
It's
2
launching.
weeks.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
at the end of the month.
Glams, we're gonna make sure that we
Yeah.
link
You can
it.
waitlist in this moment, but
Okay.
let's learn about beauty.com.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
let's
Okay.
learn about beauty.com. We'll make sure that we link it, and so everybody can go. We are definitely
we're-
going to
yeah.
invest in it. 100%.
Give me my popcorn.
Yes.
Okay. In a minute.
In 1 minute.
Can you guys tell us what your current favorite beauty products are?
Oh my
Top of mind.
God.
What do you like?
Half
in
of them
love?
are from vendors at this second, but yeah.
I know, it's so true. It's like they're unreleased. It's all stuff
Yeah.
that we're trying. I do love the NARS Light Reflecting. It's actually the foundation we both wore for our wedding. Right?
Yeah.
I always like that one. It's such a good one. What am I using for lips recently?
Or
I'm really
even
bouncing
brands that you
around.
think are really just
Brands
doing a great job.
Yeah.
Look,
Wow.
for me, there's brands I go to because I've connected with the founder. It's another thing we do. We do like
It's
beauty heroes.
true.
Like there's Danessa Myricks is one of the. She's a light warrior.
Amazing
Obsessed.
person.
Danessa's a light warrior. She brings category makers to market.
Yes.
House Labs, the head of product development, is a hero. She's a hero of mine. So those formulas are just they're magic,
Mhm.
and they're science driven, and they're pushing the industry forward. Right. So each brand for me, there's a connection. And for
Yeah,
Christina,
yeah.
like it's funny. She has her favorites based on me explaining them to her,
It's
and she
true.
has
I
her own
always have a
favorites.
bias. Yeah.
Charlotte Tilbury is one of the most incredible hybrids of makeup artist, founder,
We just met her
entrepreneur, product
recently.
developer I've ever met.
Icon.
It's
Yeah.
just like, but Pat McGrath is also equally as iconic in her lane. And her
Right.
lane's a little different
And
than
different.
Charlotte's because they're
Yeah.
different artistically.
Mhm.
So like when I think about mass brands, Milani brings the most accessible, like luxurious products to market for users that can't go to Sephora or Ulta necessarily. Well, they're sold at Ulta. I mean, the other side of Ulta.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. The separation of Ulta.
Skincare, right? Beekman 1802. Love the Beekman men. I feel their energy when I'm using their products.
Yeah.
The story is beautiful. There's beautiful, just again, it's energetic. It's about the intention that these founders have for me. And it would be remiss of me not
Bioma
to.
too. He's
Yeah.
amazing.
Bioma
Mark.
was like
Yeah.
like a Scottish fairy.
Yes, yes.
And like we
Yes.
can't, we're gonna close out with where we started. We're
Yeah.
not gonna do this podcast and not mention like one of my all-time favorite beauty brands, which has been a favorite of mine since launch, Makeup by Mario.
Yes.
I mean, come on, that's why we're here.
We love him.
We love him.
Yeah,
We
he's
love him
so
so much.
Also a light warrior.
Yes, and he is just an incredible artist in general.
Mhm.
Love so many of his products.
So
I used
talented
many
and
of
so
them
kind.
today. I was going to say, have you guys met Alicia and Vic from Mob?
No, we
people
have not.
keep
but we have to.
saying this.
Please
that,
meet
you
them.
guys
Yes,
would
please
vibe
have to
meet them.
so
We love them
much.
dearly. I'm going to see them next week. They are
Amazing.
incredible, and they really are. I just the community they've built and how they produce their products based on their community. I think that you guys would
Would
hit it
vibe.
off.
Yeah.
So you're gonna love them.
Okay.
Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Yes, we
had three
Yeah,
more
We'll do a part two. We're gonna do a part two. We have to.
We
We
need
didn't
to do a
even
part
get
two.
to like half
Wait,
of the
where
questions.
are you guys based?
We live in New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we come for our New York visit, we'll do Los
Cool.
Angeles and New York, and
Yeah.
we'll have you guys,
Love
and we'll
Okay,
do part
let's
two.
do it.
This was so informative, not
Thank
just
you.
for our listeners, but for us too.
Yeah.
I learned so much. I literally could have just been like,
Yeah.
push these two mics towards you guys as well, and just been like, Run the show.
Yeah. And honestly, like hearing you and then watching your videos, I always feel like validation.
Yes.
Like
Good.
if you like a product that I like, or
Yeah.
something, I'm like,
Yes.
yes.
Otherwise, we did it. We did it.
Oh, well, thank you for having
Thank
us.
you
It's
for
been
having
Thank
us.
you. Thank
Y'all
you guys.
know where to find
Yeah,
them. But
we-
we're going to link everything in our show notes and on our website and all of the things. Please go support them. They are amazing women and we adore them.